You're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson, episode 23. Hey there, you're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast. My name is Angela Henderson, and on this show, we talk about improving your business, life, or both by having amazing and rich conversations with brilliant guests who will inspire you and who will give you tips and tricks to help you grow both in life and in business. Hey there, amazing business owners. Angela here, and welcome to another episode of Business and Life Conversations with Angela Henderson. I hope your day is going brilliantly well and that you're ready to listen to another amazing episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today because I'm talking to someone who I've known for a while and seen her go from strength to strength. This person I'm talking about is Rebecca from I Am Montessori here in Brisbane, Australia. What I love about Rebecca is that she's always looking for the positive. She believes that life is made up of a series of choices only we can make, and that we are exactly where we are based on these choices. And ultimately for Rebecca, she chooses to be happy. On today's episode, we're going to be talking just about that, choices, but more importantly, making choices about pivoting your business for success, learning to be okay with a business starting out as something and morphing into something else, and remaining open-minded during this process. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me, Angela.
Yes. How are you? Now, you are a Brisbane-based girl also, so how's your day going so far?
Yeah, really good. Weather is good here.
Business is good. We do live in luxury, so we are very good with that. Now, listen, we've known each other for a few years now, but unfortunately, I think the last time we connected was by fluke at a park, right before you were about to have bub number 2, I believe. And
absolutely.
We hadn't connected, but again, we're friends on Facebook. I see what you do, you see what I do. And so it's amazing to be able to reconnect to the podcast because you are just going from strength to strength with I Am Montessori. So before we get started though about digging into about I Am Montessori and how to pivot your business and choices, I want to know what your favorite movie is. I like to start off, fresh and light for the audience?
Absolutely. Growing up, and probably still to this day, my favorite movie would be Remember the Titans.
Okay.
I played a lot of sport when I was younger, and it had a message in it that still resonates for me now in business as well. But even when I had my 2 children, the lullaby song, I would sing to them was that na 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 hey goodbye.
Yeah.
And then recently, The Greatest Showman I've watched 3 times now, and I would never thought I'd like a musical, but both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah,
so those are your 2 go-to. And so with The Greatest Showman, again, high reviews, something I've yet to watch, but I don't know a single person who has said a single bad thing about the movie. Would you agree with that?
100%. I watched it the first time drunk, very, very drunk. And it was awesome. So the second time it was even better. So it is, the message is, it's like, would watch it with any age child. It's life-changing for me.
No, that's good to hear because Finley, my soon to be 9-year-old, at the time of this recording, he is 8. He'll be 9 tomorrow. So by the time people listen, he will be officially 9. And he keeps asking me, Mom, will you let me watch it? Will you let me watch it? And I haven't done enough research to know. So that's good to know that you've given me the tick of approval that
absolutely.
Okay for him to watch it. Now, listen, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, how you started a business, and where you're at today with business. So we have a clear understanding about who, Rebecca is.
Too easy. I'm 32, live in Brisbane, born here. Started I Am Montessori 5 years ago. My neighbour gave me a book on Montessori when my first child was 1, and 3 months later I started the company. I got my first investor from the local bowls club because he'd just sold his business, and I wanted to change education. I've always been in business, I should say. My first ever business when I was 17 was Fashion Weekly, and I sold that in 2011, and then started a PR and marketing business for small businesses. And then, I Am Montessori was just an idea that I took and went with it.
And you're rocking and rolling because you started off with 1 facility or center, you could say, and now you've got how many different centers?
So I started off with like a playgroup, parent-child classes that they would pay to come and learn about Montessori. And then in October 2016, I started our first childcare centre at Alex Hills, which is a 64-place long daycare centre. And then I just taken on my second centre July this year, 2018, and I also had a family daycare scheme, which I've recently made the decision to close. So 3 services approved by the government. We're affecting about 400 families a week. So
through the I Montessori. So for those that are listening, now listen, I'm all over the Montessori element of education, but can you just give them a little tidbit, do you mean a quick few sentences about what is Montessori? What's the difference about it?
Yeah, Montessori is child-led. It's a prepared classroom, and children work more so independently and individually rather than in groups. So if a child is interested in mathematics and that's their strength, they can do that. Or if they're creative, they're not held back from art and have to wait until, 2 o'clock on a Thursday to be able to do what they're good at. So lots of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs came out of a Montessori early childhood education. And Maria Montessori, she was from Italy, and the philosophy is over 110 years old.
Wow. So how cool that is. So again, like you're saying, it's child-led. Kids get to kind of rock and roll wherever they feel for the day, what their strengths are. Obviously, there's still some guidance from the adults and the educators that are in the room, but they're not being told or dictated, you must sit, you must do this, you must do that. It's, again, really nurturing their creativity, their imagination, and allowing them the opportunity to, rock and roll with what they feel like they want to do. Is that right?
Absolutely. There is limits within those boundaries. It's not just free for all, but yeah, it is. For me, it's modern education. It's what we need our kids to have.
No, and I know with Finley, my almost 9-year-old, he has ADHD. So one of the biggest things, especially I see in boys, just the way that their brain develops and, all my mental health skills coming in, I guess, is that he says, Mommy, he's like, sometimes I just need to go outside. That's all. I just need a 5-minute break to go outside. In my brain, he goes, it stops working, Mom. He goes, it just like I can't listen anymore. So then I look outside, but then I get in trouble for looking outside. He goes, but all I really want to do is just play for a minute. That's all, Mom. And, there's so much to be said, I think, about the value of play. I think people underestimate play, like, oh, the kids are just playing. But play is where, creativeness comes from. They're able to problem solve. There's so much, wealth in play, but yet, isn't obviously really looked upon in that formal education setting.
Absolutely. Well, Maria Montessori would say play is the work of the child.
I couldn't agree more.
So, play is not just in the playground. Play should be how they're learning numbers and letters and everything in life. It should all be play.
And do you find in Brisbane in particular, we can't probably talk about the world, but obviously, is it easier to do the Montessori type of philosophy when they're younger? And then what happens when they get to high school? Is the only options we have in Brisbane or in Australia really like that formal education, or what happens?
There's in Queensland, so Brisbane's got Brisbane Montessori School that currently goes to grade 10, and then you've got Montessori International College on the Sunshine Coast goes till grade 12. They're really your only options in our direct area. But yeah, I'd say for me, there's going to be more, and I will have an entrepreneur high school in Brisbane in the next couple of years. So it's changing.
Dude, yay! So exciting for you. Again, we could probably just keep talking, but I'll pull us back to what we're talking about. And really that is about businesses pivoting their business. But before we explore how you have pivoted your business, I just want to talk about the listeners who might be out there going, okay, well, that's a jargony word. What does that mean, Angela? So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And really, for those of you listening, pivoting is super simple. It means changing your business model until you can prove that it works and it is providing revenue for success. Sometimes pivots are major shifts, and other times it is a small change that can produce sales results enormously. So it really, if you just think about it, it's just changing the direction of your current model. An example I can use is that I too am currently pivoting my business. I'm moving away from a one-to-one model because this model means I can only help a limited number of women in business. And I'm now introducing my one-to-many model by creating an 8-week business coaching program called Profit Pillars. And this particular model will allow me to work with 50 or more women at one time. while at the same time scaling my business for future growth and success. So even though it's something that sometimes you might not want to do, the feedback that your clients give you, or it's just not working for your family life anymore, it means you've got to look at what you're currently doing and where you want to go. So I just wanted to bring everyone back so we're all on the same page about pivoting. So for you, Rebecca, since you've been in business, how many times have you pivoted, big or small, and what does that look like?
Oh, thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands, definitely thousands in 5 years. There's probably 4 major shifts that have happened in the 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started as parent-child classes, and also selling materials that I imported directly from China. They were the 2 biggest issues we had. Parents were on wait lists for years to be able to get their children into Montessori, so they were at least able to come and learn about it and how to do it at home.
Uh-huh.
But also materials were so expensive. Something that I would sell for $14.95 was $104 before I started bringing it in.
Yes.
So, that's how we started, and that was what was in my business plan to start with. There was no other. Childcare was never a thing that I would ever have thought of doing, or opportunity that came up. And then I had a call to start a childcare centre for somebody, for a group, and I go with the whole Richard Branson, if you don't know, just say yes and you'll work it out later.
Yeah, it's the best way to go sometimes.
Definitely. So, I wasn't Montessori trained, but I'd hired a Montessori teacher, and I learnt and enrolled and did my own study on it. But I always hire in the skills I didn't have, which is what I did when we took on that centre. So we successfully took on that centre and we opened it for them, and within 6 months got it to 70% in an oversupplied area. So it proved to me that we could do it. So it's something that we started doing for more owners. And then an opportunity came up to have our own. Now, I sold down equity at these key points because I didn't have the capital. But there's always a way. People make up lots of excuses like I don't have time or I don't have money. But if you're creative, there's ways to do it. So so the first change was, do we do childcare? Like, do we do long daycare? What is this about? And we made the call to do it. And, that service is not 2 years old, and we just won the National Service of the Year award, and we got exceeding.
Fantastic.
I know. It was, so that building's 30 years old, it's not. So for me, it was our, that choice to go into childcare was able to prove that you didn't have to have brand new buildings and you could do amazing education for children. So first, that was the first big decision because that was a lot of money. That obviously required, nearly $500,000 to do that.
Yeah.
So that would be one big decision. Another one was we had family daycare, and I think for me the most emotional decision I've had to make. So people talk about, women are too emotional for business, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually not that emotional as a person, but we do have to take into consideration emotion when we're making big decisions, especially if we're the sole decision maker in our businesses. And the choice to close or to stop offering something that is such a big identity of what you do. So when I made the decision to stop retail, but when I made the decision recently to stop family daycare, that was going to affect, 200 something families and 21 educators. And I cried a lot.
Yes.
But I'd given it everything. I should have closed it probably 6 months before we have. So we finished next week on that one. But I gave notice 7 weeks ago, and I should have closed it 6 months before, but I held on. And I don't regret holding on because I don't regret anything, but letting go and saying no. So making that change. And as soon as I made that change and made it public, the amount of opportunities that opened for the growth of the rest of the business, it's just like it freed up. I was holding space. Family daycare was taking up space, and now there's all of this space for opportunity.
And sometimes, again, when we're in it, though, aren't we? Like that emotional, like, oh, I don't know. And you start questioning yourself, and you start doubting yourself. And then you you just go around and around in circles, don't you, really? But like you said, though, it's like people that are also working in a full-time job, and they finally agree to even step back to half-time, right? And they're like, oh my goodness, I'm making more money, and I'm more creative, and I've got more opportunity. And then you get done completely, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Like, why didn't I do this? But I guess it's so important, though, that sometimes you're just where you're meant to be, so we can't change what we should have done or what we could have done, but it was part of that process.
Absolutely. You've got to feel it. You've got to really lean into it rather than avoid it, because when we avoid making decisions, we lose a lot of opportunity. But you've got to feel it, and that's something that over the last few years I've become okay with, to feel like you're making the big decision, but how to actually narrow in on your gut instinct and 100%. Get rid of all of the noise and be like, this is the right decision, and trust in yourself. But that comes with time.
And so when you kind of started, I know you mentioned a couple of times that, oh, I wish I would have done it 6 months earlier. Can we just go back a little bit? Because I'm curious to know, like, what were some of the warning signs for you telling you that, or like kind of inkling going, gosh, I really need to probably start pivoting this. And, when we look at signs, I guess, when it's time to pivot your business, they're going to be so different for everyone. So for example, you've got that, I do believe there's that gut feeling, and so many people don't go with their gut. But I do think that if your gut's kind of going, something's weird, and you keep going back to that's something to be said. I also think that, when sales are dropping, there's too much competition, you're getting negative feedback on what you're supplying, your market has changed, you're not having fun anymore. There's so many things that are these kind of like red signs that, we've got to change, we've got to start pivoting the business, whatever that looks like. So what was some of those signs for you?
Parents not paying. So it getting harder, it costing me more money to run and carrying that debt. But also we had to scale it up. So family daycare was something that, you had to scale. You have to have certain amount of staff per educators, all that sort of thing. So your margin was quite tight. And so I was always high quality. And then I went, okay, if we've got to try and make this work, I will take on whatever, people, anybody. And the first time I did that, 2 weeks later, I had to close her. I couldn't it was so bad for us.
Yes.
And that was the first sign.
Yep.
In the fact that I had, what's the word when you go against what you believe in, or what your ethic, what you think you should be doing and what you want to offer, and then you go against it to try and grow. You go against it based on money.
Yes.
I've got to grow this, so I'll just see if it works. Didn't work. And then some major things happened in the local area on family daycare, and a lot of educators were looking for schemes. So we were able to double overnight, basically.
Yeah.
And we did that, but we only took on really good educators. So we were fussier than we were the few weeks beforehand. But nothing changed. So I doubled the amount, but it was still time poor. It was taking up all of our resources, staffing, but my brain power. It had taken all of my creativity and everything I had. And I'm like, I'm making like $4,000 a week from this.
Yes.
And it's killing me. And that's if all parents pay. That's if everybody, things happen. So I doubled it and it still didn't change. And I should have gone as soon as I questioned and went against what I believe in, that's when I should have said, this is not going to work. You're trying to do something against who you are. So that's probably on reflection. But I'm a signs person as well. And when these schemes were closing and they were getting closer and closer to my head office, I was like, oh, maybe I'm meant to. But I should have known when I asked other people what they thought, because I never do that. And as soon as I was asking people what did they think, I should have known that was me trying to get what I knew was wrong backed up by somebody telling me I was right. And everybody always tells me I'm right.
Yeah, and it's so often that happens. Where like and I also think that as soon as you start asking like, hey, should I do this? You actually know the answer.
Yes.
You're
Yep.
just like you get, and I also think people kind of like look for certain people. Like if I go to this person, she's going to tell me what I want because she will do this. And if I go to this person, they'll tell me what I want to hear. Whereas sometimes, like again, even regardless of that, if you're already asking, you're already questioning, you already know your answer. So often
100%. And my business mentor was the one who told me I should have closed it way before, like we'd had conversations and made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I went against it all. And the people I asked, everybody else around me, apart from, other people who are in business, they'll all tell me, they always tell me yes. Nobody ever questions or does anything against what, and I want people to do that. And it's really important. What's come out of that big decision is to find people and surround myself with people who are willing to tell me how it is. Because I tell people how it is. I just need people to do that to me.
Yeah. And I agree. Sometimes that you want the truth. It might suck, but you're like, that's what you need for growth. Sometimes you got to hear it. See, so interesting. So again, so pivoting was very different. But again, if you still go back to your gut knew.
Yes.
And I say this to so many of my own one-to-one clients is that follow your gut. Follow it, and I'm not really into a lot of the, what would you say, crystals and a lot of the new stuff. That's not me. But I do believe there's something about intuition that you can't mess with. It's like, even like with moms, there's multiple times like, I'm like, I think something's up with Chloe's ears. They're like, no. They're like, I really think something is. Take her to the doctor. Sure enough, she's got middle ear infections and she's pretty much was going deaf. Like there's those things that you're like, but why didn't I just do it 3 weeks ago? Because everyone was just saying, oh, you're overreacting, or, so people do tell you what, they think you want to hear. So pivoting for business. So great. So for those of you that are out there, and I'm not saying that if sales are down, that means you must pivot. But if sales are down on a regular basis and nothing's changing, that's an indicator that, you need to, start looking at things. As Rebecca said, if parents stop paying for their service or they're late on payments, same type of thing, red flags, people. You're not, again, I think happiness has to go back to it too, because as you said, you were trying to chase something that was going against what you were doing. So it was making you unhappy. And really, in the long run, it was wearing you out emotionally, all of that. So again, if you're starting to really not be happy with what you're doing anymore, I start looking at things. So for you, Rebecca, pivoting your business, as we know, can be scary as all hell. For you, though, you talk about leaning into it. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what you did when you actually needed to face your own fear when it came to pivoting your business?
Absolutely. So when I knew that I had to make the decision, I usually binge on podcasts and YouTube videos of motivational businessy people, everybody, different types of people. Because it's sort of like I don't know, like people pump up before a game. And
like, woo!
and like, no, I believe it. I can do this. And just made the first phone call. I broke down what I had to do and just did the first phone call. And as soon as I told the first person, I was genuine and authentic. And the letter that I wrote that I had to cancel it and all of this sort of stuff, I was straight up. And that's the thing. It felt good to be true to myself. But you really, for me, I have to break it down, and you just do the first, eat that frog or whatever. You do the first call and the one I did was the hardest one I thought it was going to be. And as soon as it wasn't the reaction that I'd built up that I was going to get, the rest became easier. And to be honest, it went amazingly well. My staff all got amazing jobs that I had to let go because of letting go of that unit. They got great jobs. It's all flowed perfectly for the last 7 weeks. And next Friday, we're done.
You were
that
done.
Part is done. And
that part is done, but so many new and exciting things that will come from that, as you mentioned.
Well, now it's changed. Now it's, there's 4 opportunities in front of me, and it's like, well, what am I going to do? Which one do I do now? So, you're talking to accountants and solicitors and trying to make that decision, which is a different change, but leaning in and breaking it down, we over-analyze and we make this big drama in our head, and it's not usually that. Be who you are.
Just be who you are and just kind of go and do it. Break through it. And again, I talk about, I think on every single episode I've ever done so far, is imperfect action is better than no action. If you got to do it, just do it. And as the more calls I'm sure you did, or the more people you let know, it never took away the sadness maybe, but it became a little bit easier because you've got your words down, you know what you're saying, you're believing in what you're saying, you're true to yourself, and everything else will just flow on. Now, what I love about you, Rebecca, though, is that you talk about choices and that you need to be okay with change while
Mhm.
remaining flexible and being on your toes, and just to take that opportunity when you're faced with it. So really, you've also talked about just being like, staying open-minded. So can you talk with me about how remaining flexible and being open to opportunity can be a positive thing when pivoting your business?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I had a pretty tough childhood, but I've always stayed optimistic, always, always. And I think you are who you hang around. So
Mm-hmm.
firstly, your mindset comes from who you spend the most time with. So
Yes.
that's extremely important, firstly. But with change, being responsible for our decisions. So we can't control everything that happens in our environment or to us, but we are responsible for how we react.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, may have been abused when I was younger. But I will never want that to be gone because that's such a strong part of who I am, but I'm responsible for how I react to those type of things.
Uh-huh.
For the really heavy stuff in life, it is our choice on how we react. We are responsible for that. And so when it comes to, small business and you want to start a business and actually being responsible to yourself and, excuses, we make so many of them. And they are the things that kill so many amazing ideas. And for me, so many more women especially could have amazing businesses and freedom, which for me is a big word and a big need of mine, if they stopped making excuses and made choices, took responsibility and then made choices,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that whatever they choose, whatever the outcome is, it's because they chose it. And when you have that control, life changes dramatically. Don't play the victim.
Yeah, and sometimes choices, like you said, there's always a positive or a negative to it. But again, at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, take responsibility for it. And
Absolutely.
and when you're making these choices, again, I really think it is important that the choices, like for you to close down the family center, would have been hard. But as we talked about, you're now sitting with 4 wonderful opportunities in front of you to help you grow, not only as a businesswoman, but also just as a person collectively. So, you've got to just kind of roll with it sometimes, but ultimately you're in the driver's seat.
Every time, it's whatever. It's up to me. Whatever happens to me, it's the same as my staff, and the culture we've built is amazing because they all need to take responsibility for their own actions. And if somebody's not happy, I try to find them. I try to work with them on what they want, and they need to make choices. Don't stay in a job if you are unhappy.
Yeah.
We are choosing to get up. We choose to hate Mondays.
Yep.
That is a choice. Nobody else is controlling that.
Mm-hmm.
Your boss, your husband, if they are, get out of it, but change your mindset that all of that is up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know people look at me weird. I love Mondays. I'm like,
it's my favorite day of the week. My son knows this.
I'm just like, I love my kids, but come Monday, I'm like, sayonara. Do you know what I mean? I get a little bit of freedom back,
Yeah.
And I think it's important. And I've got no qualms saying that. Like, some people are like, oh, that means you don't love your kids. No, it doesn't mean that at all. I just think that it also shows my kids that I'm able to, do you know what I mean? Do other things and just be a mom. And that I've got ideas. And, I think my kids equally, though. I remember when we were at daycare, they would say, Mom, is it daycare day? Because I didn't play the games the way that your friends would play, and I wouldn't dress up the way they wanted me to dress up. So I think kids, too, equally long to be with people that they, do you know what I mean, can relate to the whole time. So I think it's, it's both ways on that one.
I think from a parent perspective, and this is where I guess the background of Montessori helps me on this, but if we tell our parents and we tell our children, I hate work or work's a drag, like at what point do you think that they're going to like work when they grow up? Like what type of life is that? Just love what you do and do what you love. And that's why I love Mondays. And my son knows it. Both of my sons know it. And one's, only 15 months, but Mondays is my favorite day. And I'm the same. I went back to work straight after both of them because it's such a big part of who I am.
Yeah.
But I know who I am and I make choices in the best interests of me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
But I own that and I'm responsible for that. And whatever the outcome is, I'm okay with that because we're all happy.
Yeah.
I don't care what other people think.
Yeah. And yeah, so important. So many people, I was in a session yesterday with some clients and they kept referring to their competitors. And I'm like, no, man, don't worry about them.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, but I'm like, no. I'm like, if you get anything from our meeting today, cut what your competitors are doing and play your own field. Just worry about you. Because the choices that they were potentially making is they were choosing to focus on their competitors. Where I'm like, if you put that same amount of energy and chose to focus on you and your own, do you know what I mean, pathway, you would actually be, potentially catching up to them. But because you're so focused on them, the choices, but again, all we can do sometimes is just plant the seed.
That's it. You've got to be aware. You've got to be aware of competitors, but you can't sit on them. You can't.
No. And I think it's good to know who they are because it always helps you with your game, but never try to duplicate, never try again. That's probably another podcast for another day, but yes, we're saying, we could talk about that one forever. So now listen, pivoting, for those of you out there that are going, holy man, maybe I want to grow. Maybe I need to get rid of something. Maybe I need to, what I'd suggest you do from this particular podcast on pivoting your business for success is really look down and, take a piece of paper, sit with your team, map out what's working well, what isn't working well. Are there any financial stuff that's, hindering you that needs to change, or else you potentially will lose your business? Sit down and really flesh that out. I'm not saying anyone listening, go and pivot your business. It doesn't work like that. But what I am encouraging you to do is look at your business and see whether or not you need to change or pivot right now for your business. All right. Now, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experiences in the 4 different major, pivots that you've had, and how ultimately they've all led you to where you are today. So, which I would assume at some stage you'll pivot again, because that's what we do. We're constantly pivoting to make our business better. So for the listeners that want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I am Montessori.com.au or RebeccaGrugan.com.
All right, fantastic. And for my those of you that would like to know, again, all these links, what we would do, my team and I will be putting everything together, the whole transcription for this episode at angelahenderson.com.au. And of course, I cover all sorts of related business and life topics inside my Facebook group, the Australian Business Collaborative, of over 3,000 different businesses. So please make sure to head over and join, because I'd love to see you there. But until then, everyone, have an awesome day no matter where you are in the world. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson. www.angelahenderson.com.au